in yoga's ear. Its message enters, stirring the blind brain, and keeps in the dim, ignorant cells its sound. The hearer understands a form of words, and, musing on the index thought it holds, he strives to read it with the laboring mind, but finds bright hints, not the embodied truth. Then, falling silent in himself to know, he meets the deeper listening of his soul. The word repeats itself in rhythmic strains. Thought, vision, feeling, sense, the body's self are seized unutterably, and he endures an ecstasy and an immortal change. He feels a wideness and becomes a power. All knowledge rushes on him like a sea, transmuted by the white spiritual ray. He walks in naked heavens of joy and calm, sees the God face, and hears transcendent speech. This evening, we are honored once again to have Dr. Mishra and his third lecture on Sanskrit, Mantra, the Power of Primal Sound.
Namaste. There is a text in Sanskrit called Hatha Yoga Pradipika. It says the union of mind with the pure sound is the highest kind of yoga. And mantras as powerful tools do this work of uniting mind with the pure sound. In the Vedic and Tantric tradition, the mantras are given much importance. But what are these mantras? Why mantras have to be chanted? Do they really have any impact? If yes, then on what? What do they do with us? And who created all these mantras? And why these are called mantras? There are several questions need to be answered in the context of mantra yoga or in the discussion on the power of primal sounds. The mantras are not formulated or composed by any individual, but they are revelations. They are revealed to those who have attained a highest kind of state or who have attained to the highest level of consciousness. These mantras are words of power, they are words of light, they are potent, they are rhythmic, they are vibrant, and they are much more powerful than the ordinary language. And these mantras have come to those who are called rishis. The rishis are not the composer of the mantras, but they are the seers of the mantras. They are the hearers of these sounds, these pure sounds, which are in fact the translations in sound form, in rhythmic, pregnant utterance, translations of some ultimate experience, deeper spiritual or occult experiences. The truth has been seen, felt, experienced, realized, and then given this sound form. The rishis, while in their tapas, in their meditation, while contemplating on certain truths, certain aspects of the truth, they have realized, they have experienced, they have seen something which has come vibrating through them, and these vibrant rhythmic utterances are named as mantras. Sri Aurobindo says these mantras come from a very highest state of consciousness or some overmind inspirations. So they are inspired words, they are words of intuition, they are words of some highest level of consciousness. And when these mantras are chanted or recited accurately, they help us to be in contact with the truth, in contact with the experience which has given birth to those mantras. And the mantras help in enormous ways in our inner growth, and especially in silencing the mind and expanding all layers of our consciousness. That is the main function of the mantras. Look at the very etymology of the word mantra. That itself explains what do the mantras do. What exactly is the power of the mantras? The word mantra in Sanskrit has two components, man and tra. There are two ways of looking at it, two ways of deriving the meanings from these two components. There is a whole tradition which believes or which has given this etymology by taking man as a root sound and tra as another root sound. So man, the root sense of man is to contemplate. It refers to the mind and all its activities. And tra is referring to the root sound trai, which means to protect, to save, to make free. So the traditional interpretation of the word mantra, referring to these two components as two root sounds, is that those words which make the mind free from all its vagaries, all its activities. That's the function of the mantra. It can be interpreted in another way by taking tra as a suffix and man as the root sound. The suffix tra in Sanskrit is joined with a verbal root in the sense of instrument or tool. For example, the root jan means to give birth or to generate. If someone wants to create a word for generator, one can simply add the suffix tra to the sound jan, and following the grammatical system or grammatical rules, one can derive the word janitra, which means generator. Similarly, a digging instrument can be khanitra, derived from the root sound khan, with the addition of the instrumental suffix tra. In the same way, man and tra, giving the word mantra, if we accept tra as an instrumental suffix, then here the word mantra means which is a tool for contemplation, which makes the mind contemplate, and by that it brings silence to the mind. It allows the mind to enter into the oceanic depth of silence from which all sounds emerge. That is the function of the mantra. And these mantras are found in the Vedas, and especially in the Rig Veda, we have the mantras of invocations and prayers. And in these mantras, when we look closely, that each mantra is available to us, each mantra, the way it is available to us and the way that one finds the sounds arranged in a mantra, it shows that each mantra is, I can't use the word composed, because mantras were never composed. So the mantras came vibrating with its own rhythm, own rhythmic pattern, which are known as chandas. So every mantra is cast into a kind of rhythmic pattern, which is its own chandas. And each mantra is revealed to a particular rishi, who is believed to be the seer of that mantra. And in each mantra we find the invocation to a particular deity. That is why the Vedic tradition gives importance to these three aspects of mantra chanting. The tradition says that before chanting the Veda mantras, one has to remember the chandas, one has to remember the rishi to whom the mantra was revealed, and one has to remember, keep in the mind the deity invoked in that mantra, the rishi, the chanda and the devata. And then one should know the meaning of the mantra. Unless and until one knows what one prays for, the meaning, the sense value of what one is uttering, it becomes difficult to feel the sense, feel what is behind the mantra, behind the sound. So it's important that one should know the mantra, and especially in the tantric tradition, it is categorically said that one has to know the meaning of the mantra before one recites it or before one contemplates on it. One can also recite the mantras without knowing the meaning. That also helps. This was a question which was asked to Sri Aurobindo once. Someone had asked Sri Aurobindo, can one recite the mantra without knowing the meaning of it? And he said, yes, one can do that. And what happens is the vibrations, the purity of the vibration of the sounds and the rhythmic pattern, when the mantra is repeated with sincerity, with devotion, although one does not know the meaning. So the very vibration of the sound of that mantra, it creates new cells in the brain, because they directly affect our nervous system, the functioning of the brain. So Sri Aurobindo says that these vibrations, they create new cells in the brain, and then they prepare the mind to realize what is behind the mantra. That's again is another secret of doing mantra sadhana or doing mantra yoga sadhana. That one can simply recite the mantras with the devotion, with intensity in the aspiration, with purity, and one gets the benefit of it. And that's what the vibration of the mantras do. But if one knows the meaning, it is always better. It is always more beneficial. And why should we recite the mantras? Is it necessary? There are people who keep asking these questions, and the understanding of this question, this aspect, is also necessary. Then one becomes clear about the purpose. The purpose must be to grow inwardly with the help of the mantras. It should not be done with the purpose of anything selfish, anything which can create problem for others and create problem for oneself. There are people who use these powers, these mantras, these words, or the power of these mantras for selfish interest, for achieving something which is absolutely material, not of any spiritual nature, but those are very harmful. They create problem for themselves and create problem for others. So whether one does the mantras knowing the meanings or not knowing the meanings, what is important to have is the purity in purpose. There has to be a strong willpower and sankalpa. Sankalpa does not mean a mere resolution or thinking of something, but it is gathering of all our movements, bringing all our movements together to form a higher aspiration. This sankalpa has to be there, and the strong willpower, purity in the purpose, purity and intensity in the aspiration, with all sincerity and with all devotion. If one does the mantra yoga sadhana, one achieves maximum of its power. The result is much more powerful and beautiful and helping the sadhaka in his inner growth. But when we recite any mantra, there are two aspects of it. One aspect I have touched a little bit, that's on the sense value of it, that one has to know the meaning. But the sound value also has to be given due respect. The sound value means its proper articulation. And if one has to articulate the mantras properly, one has to learn, one has to have a proper understanding of all the basic sounds of which the mantra is constituted. For that one has to learn, if someone is reciting a prayer, say in English, so he has to have the understanding of the basic sounds of that language. Any language can become mantric language. It is not this language or that language. Any language can become or can rise to the level of a mantric language. It all depends upon the user of the language. Say for example, in the case of English, so Sri Aurobindo has brought out English from its stage of inertia and has raised it to the level of a mantric language. So when one reads Savitri or any of the writings of Sri Aurobindo, one feels a power behind it. It is almost every word is almost like a mantra. It's a mantra because the language has been read. So when you read Savitri or when you read anything of Sri Aurobindo, don't question that why these are not written in Sanskrit, why these are written in English. This question doesn't come to a sincere sadhaka when one feels, because Almost the moment you come in contact with these writings, you feel the power, you feel the intensity, you feel that it's working like mantras. So what has happened in the case of Sanskrit language is that from its very inception, the user of this language, or the creator or the guardians of this language, they have used it for the purpose of discovering the truth of their life, truth of everything in the creation, truth of all that is within and without. They were very much conscious while using the language. They did not use the language or did not create anything, any aspect of that language by following any conventional method. Here there is an eternal relationship between sound and sense, and we have discussed about it on some other occasions. So from its very inception, this language has been raised to a level of mantra, and this language in fact has been given to us by a consciousness which always lived in a highest level, not in a level of the ordinary consciousness. That's why they were called rishis, they were called the kavis. So kavi is another word in Sanskrit which generally is used for poets, but it's more than poet. So kavi is kavayah satya shrotarah. There is a phrase in the tradition which says kavayah, these poets are satya shrotarah. They were hearers of the truth. They had a very different type of audition or hearing capacity, where they could hear the sound of the truth. And it is those who were called kavis, or the poets in the real sense. And it is from those that we have received the mantras. So these articulations of each and every sound accurately is very much important in the mantra yoga sadhana. So one needs to understand the phonetic aspect. All the basic sounds which are given in the alphabet of Sanskrit need to be understood. Not only the phonetic aspect, but also the experience aspect. Like each and every basic sound, the fundamental sound word that we find in the Sanskrit alphabet has ranges of experiences behind it. And it is these experiences that decide the meanings of the words where these sounds appear. And it is these experiences which can lead us to understand the mantric power and the mantric aspect of this sound. That's why in the tantric tradition, all these basic sounds, all these fundamental sounds that we find in the Sanskrit alphabet, they're considered as bija aksharam or bija mantra, the seed sounds or the seed mantras. And another important understanding of the tantric tradition, that these basic sounds that we find in Sanskrit alphabet, numbering 50 as per the tantric tradition, all these sounds are there within our system, our physical system. So they have explained this way, that all these fundamental sounds, that those are recognized as seed sounds, they are vibrating all the times, getting created within the human physical system. And this physical system is maintained by the flow of the life energy, the prana. The prana is always in movement, and any movement has a sound. And the movement of the prana in our system, it keeps creating sounds. And the tantric siddhas, or the tantrics, they have gone very deep in their meditation, and they have heard the sounds which are eternally created, perpetually created within the physical human physical system, human body. And they have recognized those sounds, and they have explained that the sounds which are there in the alphabet, these are the sounds which are perpetually getting created within our system. So they have this whole concept of sound body, Shabda Sharira.
Is this true of one who doesn't know Sanskrit?
One who does not know Sanskrit,
Are these still flowing? These
yeah, it is flowing. It is not necessary that you need to know Sanskrit, but these sounds are there in every human being. That is why the sounds which you find in the Sanskrit alphabet, these are the fundamental sounds, not of the Sanskrit language, but of the entire humanity. It belongs to the entire humanity. And you cannot have any extra fundamental sound other than these 50 sounds. This can be scientifically, very systematically explained. Yes. So the Sanskrit alphabet is very scientific and systematic in its arrangement of sounds. And the observation of the phoneticians or the grammarians is that all these arrangement of sounds in a particular order is based on the places of pronunciation. For example, like if you look at the consonantal sounds in Sanskrit, they are arranged in 5 different groups, and each group containing 5 distinct sounds. And these 5 distinct sounds or sounds from one group is coming from a particular place within our mouth anatomy. Say k, k, g, g, ng. These are the first 5 consonantal sounds in Sanskrit, and they are coming from the first position, that is the throat. And next, so why it is called the first position? The whole science of speech production, as viewed or as explained, as observed by the ancient phoneticians, ancient Indian phoneticians, is that it is the air element within us which gets translated into sound form. So the air comes up through the vocal cord, it gets obstructed within the mouth anatomy, and you get different sounds. So you stop the air to get sound. And the human mouth anatomy has its own limitation. The vocal cord has its own limitation. Other articulatory organs have their own limitations. You cannot stop the breath, stop the air anywhere you want. There are certain possible positions where the air can be obstructed. So the first possible position of the air obstruction is where from you say k, k, g, g, ng. What happens in these cases is the air comes up and the root of the tongue comes in contact with the soft palate, and you get these 5 distinct sounds. This is the first possible position. There cannot be any sound which can be produced from a position below where from ka is pronounced. So it's not possible by the human mouth anatomy. No human being can produce any sound, any pure consonantal sound from a position below where from the sound ka is articulated. So ka is not only the first consonantal sound of Sanskrit, but it is the first consonantal sound of the entire humanity. That has been the observation. Then the second possible position is where from you say the next group of sounds in Sanskrit called ch, ch, j, jh, nya, where what happens is the upper middle of the tongue is coming in contact with the back of the roof, and you get ch, ch, j, jh, nya. Now the most interesting part is the place where from you say ka, kha, ga, ga, nga, and the place where from you say cha cha ja ja nya, so in between there is a long gap, and no sound is possible from that position. It's simply not possible. No human being can produce. So cha cha ja ja nya is the second consonantal sounds in that group, the second position. The third group of sounds called ta, tha, da, da, na. What happens is the tip of the tongue rolls back and hits the front roof of the mouth, the front part of the arch, and you get ta, tha, da, da, na. This is the third possible position. And the fourth possible position is where from you get the fourth group of sounds, ta, tha, da, da, na. What happens is the tip of the tongue hits the root of the upper teeth, and you get ta, tha, da, da, na. And then the last group of sounds are produced by pressing the lips together, pa, pha, ba, bha, ma. When you recite it, ka, kha, ga, gha, nga, cha, cha, ja, ja, nya, ta, tha, da, dha, na, ta, tha, da, dha, na, pa, pha, ba, bha, ma, you can feel the sound shift from position number 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, and so beautifully they get articulated. And within the group also, there are 5 distinct sounds in each group, and each sound is distinct. Each sound is different from the other sound. What makes this distinction within the group? You have ka, which is articulated with minimum breath release. The same sound, when you release with maximum breath, it becomes kha. Then in the case of ka and kha, the vocal cord is tight. You hold it tight. So that's why there is no resonance in the vocal cord. And they're little harsh. Ka, kha. But the same sound, if you loosen the vocal cord, soften it, and release it with minimum breath, it becomes ga. And with maximum breath, it becomes gha. So ka, kha, ga, gha. And so far the nasal cavity is closed. The air release is only through the mouth. Now make an opening, allow the air to pass through the nose, and the sound becomes na. But the air release is simultaneous, both through the nose and the mouth. Na. So these na, nya, na, na, ma, coming at the end of each group, they are not pure nasal sounds in Sanskrit, they are oronasal sounds. So there is only one pure nasal sound in Sanskrit, which is known as anuswara, and which is articulated like or im. You find it in most of the mantras. So there the mouth remains closed and the air releases only through the nose. And when I look at it, look at each and every sound, the quality of its production, the nature of these sounds. So it has given me this understanding that the whole alphabet has an inbuilt system of a pranayama within it. One can simply recite the alphabet and gets the benefit of pranayama. That also we can make a part of the mantra yoga sadhana. Simple recitation of all the sounds in the alphabet can also become mantra yoga.
These mantras that have been revealed to the rishis, do they have multiple sounds?
They have multiple
them?
sounds in them. They have multiple sounds in them. So that's why it is necessary to understand the basic sounds, all the different combinations, all the possible combinations, and how they have to be articulated. This is one aspect, that we know the phonetics. I have just touched a little on this aspect. Another aspect in the sound value is that we have to have a proper understanding of the chandas, the rhythmic patterns, and there are infinite number of chandas where the sounds are arranged in a particular manner. Of course, in the case of the mantras in the Vedas, in the Vedic chandas, that the arrangement of syllables by short and long is not important, but the number of syllables are important. Say for example, Gayatri mantra has to have 24 syllables in it, and it has 3 lines, and in each line you find 8 number of syllables, and total number of syllables in Gayatri meter is 24.
Could you recite it for us?
Yeah. So if I have to take off the ancient Gayatri mantra or the famous Gayatri mantra which was revealed to Rishi Vishwamitra, and it is there in the Rig Veda, it is also there in the Yajurveda. So it sounds like this: Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. This is the original mantra that you find in the Vedas. The latter tradition has attached 3 more sounds to it: Bhu, Bhuva, Swaha. This Bhu refers to the earth, Bhuva to the mid region, and Swa to the upper region. In a psychological sense, these 3 refer to the physical, vital, and the mental level of consciousness, where the invocation is to transform the nature of these 3 levels of consciousness. And every mantra in the Vedas has to be recited with the sound Om, which is the essence of all sounds. So, Om Bhur Bhuvah Swa Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat is the famous Gayatri mantra which was revealed to Rishi Vishwamitra.
Would you speak a little about reciting versus singing the mantra?
The mantras have to be recited and not to be sung. Yes. So while singing, we give importance to the musical notations and the musical ornamentations. And when we do that, in the case of mantras, what happens is that it harms the arrangement of the rhythm in the mantra, the way the words are there in the mantras. So the recitation or the chanting of the mantras, keeping all the words, all the sounds intact, and following the short, long, and the conjunct consonants, the right stress and accentuation. So then one really has the effect of the mantra. If you distort that, then it may give some other meaning. Say for example, I'm not giving the example of any mantra, but what happens if you make it more musical or exaggerate, even in the ordinary language, even in the ordinary songs and ordinary words. Say for example, Dina Mani is a word. Di is a short syllable, Na is short, Ma is short, and Ani is short. So 4 short syllables. If someone sings it, not keeping the words intact, the short syllable has to be short. If you slightly prolong it, the word becomes a different and gives you a different meaning. So Dinamani means the jewel of the day. So it's a word for the sun. Dinna is day, Mani is jewel. So it brightens the day, it brings the day. So that's why sun is called Dinamani. And if you put it in a musical form and say Dinamani, so Dina becomes Dina. So Dina means wretched, one who has lost everything, and a poor, wretched guy is Dinamani. So you become, the meaning becomes the wretched of the guys. And what happens is, like, if you put it into any musical form, it loses its own intensity. The intensity of the rhythm, which is very important in the case of the mantras. So it becomes a mantra when this intensity in the rhythm is achieved. Any poetry becomes a mantra. That's what Sri Aurobindo says in his future poetry, that when the poem achieves the intensity of the rhythm, then the poetry becomes a mantric poetry.
So when I pass by the temple and the priests are chanting the mantras, it is not.
These recitations are because what the priests are chanting, what they have received from the tradition. And the traditional recitation of the shlokas, following the accentuation, there is a right accentuation marks that you find in the Vedic mantras. So these mantras have been passed from generation to generation. So the Vedas have been preserved accurately to the accent level by the Vedic tradition. But the purpose of that tradition was to preserve the Vedas. But it is not necessary that one has to recite in the same manner to evoke the emotion or to get the benefit of the mantra, the power of the mantra. So that was for the preservation of the meaning of the text, of the accents. But if you know the meaning of the mantra, you can evoke the right emotion, you can come in contact with the right experience, the force of the mantra, and you can recite it instead of singing it. So in singing, what happens, like it may become fast, it may become slow, but here everything is intact. There is a fixed rhythm in it, and that fixed rhythm is important if you want to realize the intensity of that. That's why recitation of the mantra is, chanting or reciting the mantras is important than singing it. Yes. So the chandas aspect, one has to have little understanding of that. So beyond the understanding of the phonetics and the chandas, the sound value, in the sense value, one has to understand the sense of the mantras, the meanings of the mantras. But more than the sound and the sense, there is another element which is much more important than these technicalities. So one may be technically perfect, knows the meaning, has the understanding of the chandas, has the understanding of the phonetics, phonetic sounds. But if he doesn't have that element, the element which is very important, then the mantras will not give the right result. And that element is, you can say, the sentiment or the devotion or the emotion. But in Sanskrit it is called bhava. That bhava has to be there. If that you don't feel what you are saying, that feeling aspect, if it is missing, then however perfect you may be technically, the mantras are not going to work. I mean, you can achieve some general impact or effect of the mantras, but not the ultimate effect of the mantras. When everything is combined, all the intensities are together, working together, then you have the highest impact of the mantra. And there is a beautiful verse in Sanskrit which says, Dhiro vadati Vishnave. The wise man, he says, Vishnave Namah. If he has to make a salutation to Vishnu, he says Vishnave Namah. Because the word Vishnu ends with U, so it has to be Vishnave. But Murkha vadati Vishnaya. He doesn't know the grammar of it, he doesn't know how it's to be used. He has heard Shivaya Namaha, Ganeshaya Namaha. So in the same form, he says Vishnaya Namaha, which is grammatically wrong. Okay, it has never been used in the language that way. But he doesn't know, the ignorant person. So he says Vishnaya Namaha. Then the poet says Ubhayastu Samam Phalam. But both of them, the wise man and the ignorant, they get the same result. Why? Bhavagrahi Janardana. Because the God straight looks at your bhava, looks at your heart, not at your language.
Beautiful.
And that should be the secret of all mantra yoga sadhana. So whatever mantra one may choose or one may receive for one's own sadhana, that devotion, that sentiment, that bhava, that feeling has to be there. Then the next one, last aspect of mantra yoga sadhana is, this is what people keep asking: how do I know that this mantra is going to work for me? How do I decide that this is the mantra for me? In a deeper sense, that every element in this creation has its own sound. And if one can, so in the same way, each human being has his own sound, and that sound is his mantra. And if there are ways to find, to discover the sound, the rhythm of one's own, that is the purpose of mantra yoga sadhana or all sadhana, that discover your own sound, discover your own rhythm. And if you put all your will into that, all your sankalpa into that, all your effort into that, one day you will be able to find out. But there are also gurus who know what mantra you need, and they also give you, initiate you certain mantras, because they know this is the mantra for you. But there are sometimes, like, if you have this aspiration of discovering your own sound or your own mantra, sometimes you may receive it, you may hear a voice. While reading something, you may discover your own mantra, or while doing something, or while doing a prayer, or while reading some spiritual text, or while talking with someone, while sleeping in the dream, you may receive it if you have the aspiration and will to do that. But there has to be purity in the purpose. So it comes. And the whole idea is to discover one's own mantra. And once you receive, once you have discovered that mantra, and you keep reciting it, and this constant repetition of the mantra is important in the sense that when we constantly recite it, put all our energy into it, it also starts energizing our prana. It also starts expanding the different aspects of our consciousness. And what happens is that the very consciousness of the sound, the very chaitanya, consciousness of the mantra gets awakened. And this awakening of the mantra chaitanya, the consciousness of the mantra, is very important. Then it is available on the surface level for you. So that now it starts regulating you. It starts exercising its own power on you when the mantra chaitanya is awakened. So this is what has happened with some of the famous mantras. When you say like Mahamrutyunjaya mantra or Gayatri mantra, the certain mantras have become very powerful. So whoever comes in contact with those mantras, or whoever recites those mantras, immediately starts feeling, because for several thousands of years, the rishis, many people have, by repeating the mantras, have awakened the chaitanya, the consciousness of those mantras, and have brought it onto a surface level which is available to everyone. So whoever comes in contact with those mantras or recites, so starts immediately feeling those mantras. The same thing has happened in the case of Sri Aurobindo's Savitri. But this has been, people keep reciting with so much of devotion and intensity that anyway, Sri Aurobindo himself has awakened it, has made it. And with a little bit of our consciousness and awareness, we immediately come in contact with that awareness, that consciousness, the power of that mantra. So this is the secret of the mantra yoga sadhana. And more than running around finding the mantras, if one can silently pray, invoke, and aspires to receive the mantra, it comes to you. And then you put all your energies, all your aspirations, with all purity, with all devotion, with all sincerity. If one does this, it is a powerful tool for the expansion of our consciousness.
Thank you so much. As always, I like to end with asking you a particular question that is not in Sanskrit. And tonight I would like you to tell us just a few minutes of Vashistha Ganapati Muni.
I think we have decided to take it as a whole topic.
Oh,
Yeah,
wonderful.
we will do that.
Wonderful.
So one full
I
session
don't
we
have
can
it.
have on...
Very good.
yeah,
Wonderful. Okay, let us do that.
on Vasishtha Ganapati.
Okay.